Our first guest tonight disagree about the proposed assault weapons ban. One side claims we must reduce the firepower available to those who would kill to prevent deaths when we can. The other claiming the Justice Department has already analyzed the 1994 assault weapons ban and concluded it did nothing to reduce crime or the number of shootings. Joining us is Erich Pratt, Director of Communications, Gun Owners of America, and Richar Aborn, President of the Citizens Crime Commission of New York, former President of the Bray Campaign. Thank you both for being here. And Richard, let me begin with you. Are you hopeful that Feinstein's legislation will actually be the template for what the Democratic Party will achieve?
Well, her bill is part of what the Democratic Party hopes to achieve. More importantly, what the president hopes to achieve. Gun control has always been a tough fight. I helped lead this fight in '94 when we passed the assault weapon ban the first time, and people told us it was impossible. We would never get it done, and sure enough, we did get it done. Unfortunately, it had a 10-year sunset, so the bill lapsed when Congress put these guns back on the street. So yes, I do think there's a good chance this bill gets through, along with a bill on background checks and a bill on mental health issues.
Larry, let me ask you, is it your judgment that this bill is going to be pretty much the direction that we're headed?
Well, I do think that this is going to be a part of the push. I think it's they've got a long road to hoe. And I think we need to remember that it's not going to do anything, really, to take these types of firearms out of determined hands. Connecticut had a very strict gun ban, and yet Adam Lanza stole, well, first of all, killed his mother and then stole the firearms. No law is going to prevent bad guys from doing that. And really, this is hard for gun owners to take from Dianne Feinstein, since she actually had a concealed carry permit several years ago. She was mayor.
We're going to have plenty of time to get your points in. And I want to apologize. I called you Larry. Of course, your father's name.
Your father.
That's okay.
Richard, your response to what Erich has just said.
Well, the ban was effective when it went into place. The reality is there is something we could do to stop Lanza from having gotten those weapons, which would be to require gun owners to keep their guns locked up unless they're in actual possession of them, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and most reasonable gun owners do that. We had a 10-year experience with the assault weapon ban. We saw effectiveness during the 10 years. The ban was lifted, and we saw the seizure of assault weapons start to go up, and the seizure of high magazines start to go up. Police departments all over the country were reporting that. So we have the opportunity to reduce the firepower, as your intro said, and I think it's very important we do that.
However,
go ahead,
what Richard is not telling us, and I'm sure he knows, we're actually safer today now that the gun ban sunset in 2004. You look at the FBI statistics, the murder rate has plummeted. It's gone through the floor. So we're actually safer today with these firearms being legal.
I'm sorry, this just reaches ridiculous proportions in all due respect. You cannot
look at the
possibly
statistics.
Argue that assault weapons, the presence of assault weapons, have driven down crime.
These are not assault weapons.
I don't think that's what he asserted.
He is asserting that since the assault weapon ban was lifted, we are safer. We are safer in America. We are safer in America because policing
the murder rate has plummeted. What are you going to say about that, Richard?
Eric, I know the data. It's simply not correct. The murder rate started.
Anybody here, Richard? Anybody can Google the FBI statistics and look for themselves. 2004 to 2011. I invite them to do that.
Let me say this: it is without equivocation of any kind true that more people die in this country every year as a result of being hit with a club or a hammer than are killed with a rifle. And by the way, that of course includes all rifles, which would include assault weapons, so-called. It is, if you will, one of the lesser aspects of the problem of guns and how they're used to commit crime.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't reduce the number of deaths where we can. All deaths, I mean all life, excuse me, is incredibly important. And we have the opportunity to take these weapons off the street. These are not weapons that are used by a legitimate population. These are not hunting rifles. There is no legitimate purpose for these guns.
But intellectually, Richard, and Erich, I want you to join this. I mean, obviously, the assault weapon typically has a high number of rounds in its magazine.
High capacity magazine.
It is a semi-automatic weapon. It is, in that respect, no different than semi-automatic weapons. Once you pull the number of rounds from that rifle, there's very, unless you're all into the look of the thing.
The distinguishing factors of an assault weapon are not that it's semi-automatic, but that has certain characteristics that allow it to be fired rapidly and continuously in a military confrontation.
Well, no, wait.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
These are not assault weapons.
No,
these are not.
Let me just finish. You have to pull the trigger each time.
Okay, this is not a monologue, Richard.
You're right.
Richard, it's not a monologue.
You're right. So if I may finish the thought, you can then speak. So the weapon has characteristics that allow it for sustained fire. Yes, you have to pull your finger and pull the trigger each time, but it's got a barrel shroud on it so you can hold it down. It's got a pistol grip on it so you can stabilize it for close quarters combat. This is not a gun that you raise your shoulder, acquire a target like a deer, and fire it. This is not a hunting rifle. These are assault weapons, very specific weapons.
There are millions of people use these firearms for self-defense. These guns that Richard is talking about, he knows, are not owned by any military on the earth. No military owns these type of firearms because they're not automatic weapons. You pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out the barrel. These are semi-automatic defensive weapons that millions of people own, and in fact, they're not even as powerful as your average shotgun or deer rifle. So the things that Richard are saying is, I mean, absolutely ludicrous. It's like the mayor of Philadelphia today calling these weapons of mass destruction. It is so over-the-top rhetoric when these are firearms that millions of law-abiding people are using for self-defense, men and women alike.
Well, tell that to all the children that have died in the school massacres. Tell that to the cops that are disproportionately the victims of these weapons. Tell that to the people who did not have to die. There's a reason why law enforcement is so solidly behind this. It's because they know these are crime guns. When I was a prosecutor, I saw that these were crime guns.
Well, let's be very clear. In many cases, the reason that police chiefs are behind it is because they are appointed by mayors who are elected, who are telling them precisely what to do. Urban centers are, well, if I may finish, urban centers are a liberal bastion. That is not the home of warmth and cuddly feelings for the Second Amendment. I think you would agree with that. Eric, please, go ahead.
Absolutely. That's where we see the massacres occurring, is in places where guns are banned. You look back over the last 20 years, all the shooting massacres, with the exception of one or two, occurred in places where guns were banned. That's why we have this problem. You know, the ultimate hypocrisy is that there's 1,800 cops guarding our congressmen on any given day, and yet our school children are not being guarded. That's why these tragedies are occurring.
Well, guns are not banned in Colorado.
I think we can agree to this. It's a lot more complicated than that, Eric. I don't think. Well, I would say to both sides in this, don't oversimplify, and let's maintain at least some intellectual rigor in this debate. Amongst those issues, we haven't even discussed here tonight. Mental health and the treatment of mentally ill people. And these shootings are far more the responsibility of people who are mentally ill and who have not received appropriate treatment than they are of guns.
That's why I said this is part of a three-part approach.
Go down the list.
You know, the last word I want to hear from this administration or the Democratic Party right now, if I hear comprehensive one more time, I'm going to puke.
But
the fact of the matter is,
it's a complex problem.
But no, you know what? This country needs to understand that it's time to take an honest, open, clear-eyed look at the problem and deal with it intelligently and responsibly. And when people start bloviating about comprehensive instead of saying, okay, we have a group of people who are mentally ill who are creating great tragedy, and we have got to respond sensibly, then we will deal with the first instance of the root cause.
Agreed.
And until then, this is, in my humble opinion, pure BS.
I agree with you that we have to focus on mental health, but we can't stop there. By your own statement,
I'm not suggesting that anybody stop. I'm saying let's begin, and let's begin.
Well, the president said that.
The president is doing the same nonsense that he does on every issue that he kicks down the road, which is to start talking about comprehensive instead of incremental. Deal with the instant issue.
So we should deal with the instant issue, but we have to think about it in a broad way, or else we continue to have all these deaths.
Well, I can't be as broad-minded as you, Richard, because
I think you are as broad-minded as I am.
Cosmopolitan beyond measure. Eric, as are you, and I want to say, unfortunately, we're constrained by time, or we could be even broader. We will come back, if we may, and continue the conversation, at which time we will meet that standard of broader. Erich Pratt, thank you for being here, and my apologies to you for using your father's name, but not in vain.
That's okay.
Richar Aborn, thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure.